What is going on, gunfighters? Saddle up for another episode of Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about gunfighting the right way, with God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. First and foremost, I am a Christian, a servant of God, and a follower of Jesus Christ. God has blessed me to do many things in my life, for I could do nothing apart from Him. U.S. Marine Corps combat veteran, did a couple of tours in Iraq. As an assaultman after my combat tours, I was an urban warfare instructor for the Marine Corps under Mojave Viper. Also served in the U.S. Army, both full-time and part-time National Guard. Also did several years in law enforcement, LAPD. I worked regular assignments and more specialized assignments. Been a private contractor for a 3-letter government agency. That's all I'll say about that. Been blessed to be a state rifle and pistol champion and West Coast regional rifle champion. Won more shooting competitions with the talent that God's given me than I can actually remember. Was blessed to be the commander of a tactical team in a large metropolitan area. Our primary job, the reason we primarily existed, was to stop active shooters. I got the opportunity to head up and be the commander of that team. I grew up around guns, hunting and shooting and competing at a very early age. Been blessed to hunt all over this beautiful country, from whitetail on the East Coast to mule deer on the West Coast, and bear and elk and all manner of things. I've even been a professional big game hunter and guide. But again, most importantly, I'm a Christian. And I am your host, Michael Melito. Welcome to Gunfighter Life. What are we gonna talk about today, gunfighters? The M17, a year in review. I just went back through my photos because I was thinking, I've had this gun for a while. What prompted that is a gun on my hip, the gun I just got done practicing dry firing with, that and a Kimber bolt action rifle. That was my dry fire session for the day. And I thought, I've had this girl a while. Let me look up through my pictures and see. And in fact, I've had it for over a year. So that's what we're going to talk about today. A year in review of the M17. Before we get into the day's topic, I hope that you'll consider becoming a patron. If this is not your first rodeo, if it is, don't worry about this. Just listen to the podcast. But if it's not your first rodeo here with us, and you like this message and you want to support it, Patreon is the primary way to do that. Patrons get a lot of really cool insider content, and hopefully they see it as a blessing. Sometimes they'll get the longer episodes early and commercial free. There's also quite a bit of content on there just for the patrons, which if you become a patron, you can scroll through and see. Also, I'm blessed by the Patreon group chat. We get to talk to each other on a regular basis if those people want. Not every patron chooses to, but if you choose to be a part of the group chat, we talk in there all the time. Sometimes we get deep down some rabbit holes, whether they be gun rabbit holes or deep theological debates and discussions, and I think that's good and healthy. I am blessed by those men, and hopefully they feel the same way. But a really cool tribe of men I get to be a part of. And if you want to support the podcast and be any part of that, consider becoming a patron. There should be a link in the show notes. There's also a raffle for this month in the year of our Lord, 2023, January. Probably announce a winner sometime shortly after the end of January, but all new patrons will be entered to be in that raffle. There should be a link in the show notes. You can just click for the Patreon link. Also, you can just go to goodshepherdtraining.com. If you want to just type in goodshepherdtraining.com, there's pretty easy navigation from there to the Patreon page. All right, with that, let's get into the day's topic. Let us talk about the M17. Let me lay some background. I was not keen on the M17, I will be honest. I got it because one came in a place where I had an opportunity to get one at a really good price. I paid, I think, $400, maybe $400 and something for this M17. It came in used. Guy didn't want it. And again, I wasn't really crazy about the M17. But I had started to run optics, and I had started training with them pretty extensively on a 22, which I would advise you to do if you want to train hard and also want to get started in the world of red dot, what's commonly referred to as red dot, but optics on a handgun. Start with a 22. I did. I realized that it was a good option. Not all the time, but most of the time. Even for a carry handgun, I think it's a better option. So with that, I wanted a gun that I could easily mount an optic on to make sure it was still going to be good on a 9mm, test out the theory. And it wasn't so much that it was the M17 as that it was an affordable gun that I could mount a red dot on, because all my centerfire handguns at that time were not optics ready. And instead of taking like one of my STIs and cutting it into a convertible, cutting the top off and drilling into it, I figured probably a better option to buy this $400 gun and run it. Also, I was curious about the Army's new, or the military's new, contract handgun, the M17. I'm a lover of the Beretta. I don't apologize for that. If you've listened, you'll know that. And I wanted to see the gun that replaced it. I wanted also to run that. So I thought it would be good investment on both ends. Get to test out the M17 and get to run an optic on a handgun, on a centerfire defensive fighting handgun. Well, it's been a year since then. So this is that review. I will start off by saying that I got an adapter plate and mounted a Trijicon RMR. I think they are, in my opinion, the best defensive carry optic for me. I don't like batteries. I don't like trusting things that have batteries. I don't care how long they say the battery life is. If it gets really cold, it may not transmit enough electricity to illuminate that optic. That's a real thing. Or if I leave it in a vehicle and it gets super hot, like in Vegas, that battery can explode. That's a real thing. Or maybe not explode, but leak the things that it needs to keep that optic useful to me. Those weather extremes can be hard on optics. Also, batteries, in my experience, can tend to die at some very inopportune times. For those reasons, I like optics without batteries. Now, for a handgun optic without batteries, I like Trijicon. I was familiar with them. I ran those in the Marine Corps in Iraq, the Trijicon ACOG, if you're familiar with that. And also on my Scar 17, I have had for a while Trijicon Acupoint. And they use the same technology, tritium fiber optic. They have quite a long half-life. You don't have to worry about the batteries dying. They work daytime, they work nighttime. Anyway, that's the optic I mounted on here. Big green triangle. I highly recommend. Did a whole other episode on optics on handguns. You can go listen to that if you want. But that's what I mounted on here. I've had it on there since I mounted it. It has not worked loose. It has not done anything like that. I got the adapter plate, and it has co-witnessed backup iron sights, which I, again, highly recommend on any defensive gun. If it's a competition gun or a range toy or whatever, don't worry about it. But in my experience, just like a rifle, if it's a fighting implement, I want backup iron sights. I also want co-witness iron sights. And they're advantageous for more than just if the optic goes out. They're good in a lot of circumstances. So I highly recommend that. So different sights, elevated backup iron sights, what most people would refer to as suppressor height sights. And I got the Wilson Combat grip frame, mostly because it came with a medium-sized grip. Just the way physics works, and ask anybody that does pull-ups or works out hard, the thinner the bar is, generally the better and tighter grip you can get on it, allowing you to shoot faster. I wanted a smaller grip, so instead of just going with a factory small grip, I figured why not go with the Wilson Combat. So this is a Wilson Combat grip. So it has that modification. It also has a factory SIG flat trigger. I didn't mess with any of the other trigger components. I didn't mess with the trigger pull, like any of the springs, anything like that. I didn't put a race trigger in it. I put a flat factory trigger that comes on some SIG factory guns. I prefer a flat trigger. I know that about myself. I know that about the handguns that I run. If I can get a flat trigger, I prefer a flat trigger. That said, I ran the original trigger. It was fine, but I prefer a flat trigger. I also have a super cool back plate on here with a Bible verse. Really does not affect the functionality of the gun. I just want to be honest with the modifications that it has. The Bible verse is one of the parts of Psalm 23. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Now let's get into the M17. What I've picked up on after getting familiar with it, taking it apart, putting it back together, handling it. Okay, first, just from disassembling it and messing with it, I think it is more complex than a Glock 17, 19. It's more complex. I think it has more moving parts. You just take out the striker assembly and look at it versus a Glock striker assembly. Or if you, I know they tout this fire control unit, and I did take advantage of it. I put on a grip that I found more ergonomilicious for my hands. Yeah, I just made that word up. Ergonomic. It was a better grip, I think, and I took advantage of that chassis. I did not have to take a Dremel to the gun, which I have no problem doing. One of the first things I did when I got my STI that I carried on duty was take a Dremel to it. If I don't have to, if I can get a good grip and just switch it out, that's nice. That being said, the chassis system is quite a bit more complex. If you look at that operating system, I think it is more complex than, again, a Glock 17 or a Smith & Wesson M&P. I think the Smith & Wesson M&P is almost, it does have this weird lever that you have to push down to disassemble it so you don't do the Glock thing and shoot yourself trying to disassemble the gun, which some people have been known to do. But other than that, the Smith & Wesson M&P and the Glocks are pretty similar in their simplicity and function. Comparing the SIG to that, because it's a polymer striker-fired pistol, it is more complex in my opinion. It has more moving parts, I think. I haven't done the math on that and looked up exactly, but you can probably look that up for yourself and verify it. It seems more complex to me. Let's start off with the front of the gun. I mentioned the sights are aftermarket, so that's not really a judge of the gun. The barrel is very good, I think. I believe it is a nitrided barrel, which if you don't know is not bluing. It looks like bluing, but it's not. I think it's far better. It's a good gun. It's a very good gun, and I'm kind of a snob when it comes to rifling and crowning of a barrel and precision machining of the barrel. I really care about that more than most people, I think. I don't take credit for this. Everything that I have is a gift from God, and I'm humbled that He gives me these talents. But I don't deny who I am. That's not part of being humble. That's false humility. I appreciate all that God's done for me. I am a state pistol champion several times over and took third in a national championship not that long ago before COVID when I was still competing. And one of my standards when I go to practice is 50-yard headshots. Used to be 21 in a row. I shortened it to 10 in a row so I could do other stuff in practice sessions. But to give you an idea, most people, they say don't shoot a handgun as accurately, so don't even worry about it. But if you can ring out accuracy, the barrel and the crown especially are very important to that. And I think that SIG brings a really good barrel to the table. It's a really good barrel. Sample size of 1, but I've messed with plenty of other SIG, and I think they have very, very good barrels. For a polymer striker-fired handgun, I'm going to go out and say here, this is probably the most accurate, both me shooting it and the accuracy of the firearm, the most accurate polymer striker-fired handgun I've ever run. And I've won most of my competitions with a Smith & Wesson M&P. I love those guns, but if I'm being honest about accuracy, I think this one gets it for whatever reason. So the barrel is very good. That's part of it. It also locks up really well. Talking about the crown, it also locks up solid. It's not uncommon to have a Glock and be able to push down on the barrel hood and just have it wiggle around, or at least it used to be. That doesn't do it with this. It locks up really tight. And that being said, all the training and all the times I've used this barrel, that nitride finish is held up really well. There's a few spots on it where it's starting to rub off, but for the amount of use that it's had, it holds up very well. Again, the barrel, rock solid. The finish, I don't know what finish it is exactly. It's not Cerakote, but I guess I can look it up for you guys. Alright, from my brief research, it's something akin to a PVD finish. SIG may have their own proprietary blend. It may not be that exactly, but very similar. The finish, it's a good, attractive finish. I view this gun as a tool. I use it, I carry it. That said, I don't mind admitting that's in a quite attractive finish. I enjoy Guns as Art too. You may have listened to those episodes, Guns as Art. It's a good looking finish. It does wear. It is worn in several places. You know what? Don't care. It's a working man's gun. It's not like the barrel. I really don't care if there's scratches on the slides or whatnot. There are some scratches on the slide. The slide has not rusted despite the finish being gone, which tells me it's probably a good quality stainless steel slide. The slide is good quality. It seems machined very well. Again, very well machined. The coating is a good looking coating. Maybe not the most durable finish, but just fine. So I give it marks for that. The factory grip that came on it itself, there was nothing wrong with it. It was fine. I actually left it out and my dog chewed it up, which kind of upset me, but he was a puppy. So cut him some slack. But a quick review on the original frame. It is not dog chew proof, at least not Rhodesian Ridgeback proof. But it seemed to hold up just fine. Looks like I have managed to get a few gouges in the Wilson Combat frame. Wilson Combat frame is a good one. Again, not really a review of the M17. Let's talk about the mounting system, because that's part of the slide. And I think they could have done better here. I'm just being honest. If you look at the way its complexity is in the slide when you take it off and have to deal with the internals, it seems overly complicated. I think I covered that a little bit already. I've never had this experience because I've learned the lesson of Loctite. Number one lesson, use blue Loctite, don't use red Loctite. And yes, you specifically never want to take something off. But I've learned that the hard way. But blue Loctite, and if you're going to mess with a screw on something, especially optics or something like that, use blue Loctite. But I have heard from a reputable trainer that I've had a lot of training, and they're some of the best. They've mentioned about one of the Achilles heels of the M17, and they do, let's say, quite a bit of training. And they've seen it where these screws on the inside can back out and stop the gun from working, being inoperable. So, just a reminder, if you're going to spend that much money on a gun and an optic, don't go stingy on the Loctite. Maybe that's not the time to get your Loctite from Harbor Freight, right? Maybe it's the time to get actual Loctite. Spend the $6 or $10 with inflation, whatever it costs, and get Loctite, blue Loctite, and put it on there. I think it's a little bit overly complicated. That being said, this optic has been rock solid. Not just the optic, but the mount. It has been fine. It has not moved. It has not shifted. I think it's better than the Glock mounting system, which is one of the worst. I'd say I'd prefer the Canik mounting system. I think the Canik optics mounting system is one of the best factory options. I would prefer just a straight milled cut, which is what I like to do if I'm getting a handgun, just cut for the optic that I want and two big screws drilled directly into it. So it's not the best mounting system, it's not the worst, but it hasn't worked loose, and I'm pretty hard on stuff. So that's a testament to the mounting system. Maybe a little bit complex, but it seems to work just fine. All right, let's talk about the fire control unit, which includes the trigger pull. The trigger pull is not great for a handgun, but it's pretty good for a polymer striker-fired handgun. You know, is it a 1911? No. Is it like a crisp, beautiful, precise glass rod breaking in my finger? No. I would compare that to a 1911. Is it like dragging a piano down a dirt road? It's not like that. That's what I would compare a Glock trigger to. It's pretty good. It's pretty good for a polymer striker-fired handgun. It's one of the better ones. I won't even say one of the best. I might not even say top two. Maybe it gets third place. Looking for great triggers on polymer striker-fired handguns, Walther PDP is really good. Canik Rival is also really good for a polymer striker-fired handgun. But as far as polymer striker-fired handguns, it's really good. And for a military handgun, it's not bad. It's probably better than an M16 or an M4 trigger, to be honest. And it's a handgun trigger. Is it as good as the 1911 trigger? No. Is it as good as a Beretta trigger? No. But you're comparing a, hammer-fired gun with a hammer and a sear to a polymer striker-fired handgun. Not really fair. For a polymer striker-fired handgun, it's a good trigger. So what are you comparing it to? Are you comparing apples to apples? Or are you comparing apples to oranges? It's a pretty good polymer striker-fired handgun trigger. For a defensive handgun, I say it's a good trigger. The FCU is not super easy to work on. It's not super intuitive. I would liken it to mechanical ability. Not like changing your oil. Changing your oil is pretty simple. It's more like changing your brakes. If you're able to change your brakes on your truck by yourself, you could probably work on the FCU by yourself. But it's a little bit complicated. It's not super intuitive. Switching the grip modules and stuff out is not that bad, but I'm talking about switching internals. I did that on several other people's guns. The only thing I've messed with on this was, again, factory trigger to factory trigger. And that wasn't exactly a walk in the park. Switching the grip modules out, that's pretty cool, let's be honest. This obviously is the M17, which means it has a manual thumb safety. Now, I'm acquainted with manual thumb safeties. I've run 1911s for quite a while, STI 2011s. My other, and I would consider my main carry gun, my best carry gun, is a SIG 226 single action only, has a manual thumb safety. I'm not the guy that says that'll get you killed in the streets, but that may not apply to you. If you're just comparing this to a 320, you can get 320s without the manual thumb safety. But as far as thumb safeties go, I give it a C. It's nowhere near as good as a 1911. It's not as big. It's not as pronounced. Kind of seems like an afterthought, which I guess it is because the 320s don't generally have them. You can get models with them, but not the best. Not the most ergonomic. That being said, it's not the worst. Not like some of the ones on the Rugers or the little small 380s or stuff like that. I give it a C. It's not bad. It's functional. It works. It's not as good as a 1911. It's not as good as ironically, I think the SIG 226 single action only Legion has one of the better ones. I think even better than a 1911. Just because you can manipulate the slide and unload it and stuff with the safety on, which is kind of nice. But as far as thumb safeties go, I've worked this thumb safety a lot. I practice with it a lot, and it's still stiff. It has not broken in. It's not crazy hard, but it's not the best. I give it a C there. Mags, and here's where I had to reach out to some of the patrons for help. The SIG factory magazines have proven reliable, but I don't even carry one in the gun, and here's why. I don't know if this will come across on audio, but this is a Pro Mag. Alright, probably didn't hear anything there, right? I'm going to take that out. I'm going to put in the SIG factory 17 round mag. You hear that? You know what I call that? Not cool, SIG. What's the dealio? I can't believe that hasn't come up as an issue in the military. When I was a Marine and I was inspecting my Marines before patrol, if I was in charge of that, we'd do things like move around with our kit to make sure nothing rattled. That's a pretty distinct rattle. That doesn't always apply, right? If you're a tanker, probably not a big deal. But if you're infantry and you're trying to be sneaky, trying to do something sneaky, that is a big deal. What's up with that? Also, I do quite a bit of handgun hunting, and I'm not like most handgun hunters. Again, I give God all the glory and the credit. I have killed more animals with a handgun than maybe not anybody. Certainly not anybody. Certainly somebody has done more. But I've killed a lot of animals and a lot of big game animals with a handgun. And I generally would do it with my carry gun. Why? I want the practice. And I want the challenge. If I'm hunting with a handgun, it's not because it's the best tool for the job. It's not. I'm doing it because I want the challenge. Pretty hard to stalk up on an animal when you sound like a baby rattle. And I've reached out to the patrons, and I guess that's not unique to me. That's a thing. Where their factory 17 round mags rattle around in there, where your gun sounds something like a soda can with a bunch of rocks in it. So I don't know what that's about, but I'll tell you the solution that I came up with. A Pro Mag, which I've tested and it works fine. So it's not the factory mag, but it's a Pro Mag. And it's pretty stiff in there. And I noticed when I got it, the mag changes, sometimes it would be a little bit sticky because of the flaps on it. So I took a little hand file and I trimmed them off till they were just right. They fall out really nice. But also when they're inserted, they don't rattle at all. The mag doesn't rattle. And I must point out that it's pretty common for semi-automatics with mags, with Glocks, with whatever. Sometimes the mags, for whatever reason, and the rounds in the mags, the rounds will rattle in the magazine. That's not uncommon. That's not what's happening here. The entire magazine is rattling in the magazine well. First I thought maybe it was just me because I got the Wilson Combat Grip module and I didn't have the original one to test it, but I asked around and apparently it's not unheard of for that to be a thing. Another reason I really appreciate the patrons. So the factory mags, I don't like them for that. It's cool that it comes with a 21 round mag. That pretty much stays in my bag. Sometimes I EDC that, but not generally. I generally carry the Pro Mag in the gun and the Factory 17 as my go-to reload in my normal everyday carry CCW setup. Because if I'm doing an emergency reload, I probably don't care if the mag rattles a little bit. But from day-to-day walking around it, or if I do want to be sneaky, I don't want that to rattle. Also, just to be honest, it's annoying. So there is that on the grip module and the mag well. The controls. I talked about the safety, the slide lock. It seems also pretty common that people's thumbs will ride on the slide lock and it will not lock back on the last round. That's pretty common to a lot of handguns, so I'm not going to knock the SIG M17 or 320 for that. The magazine release is pretty awesome, actually. I'll give it an A for that. As far as magazine releases go, I think it's got proper tension. It's not so wimpy that mags come out unintentionally usually. And it's a good location and it's a good shape that I can reach it and do fast speed reloads. I find the reloads one of the big advantages to this gun. Speed reloads are really good with this gun. That's partially because of the Wilson Combat Grip module. It has a built-in mag well. But even so, it's a quick reload pistol. Relevant is that for CCW? You could argue that back and forth, but the fact is it's pretty good at speed reloads. Even better, not better overall, I'm talking just the speed reloads, better than my Legion 226. As far as reliability goes, very reliable. Very reliable. I don't know that I've had a malfunction. I may have. I don't remember them, and it's certainly, if it wasn't reliable, I wouldn't carry it. Even with hollow points, even with stuff other than, round nose, a ball, it's good. I would consider it a very reliable handgun. So in summation, I'd say it is a good gun. It is a good carry handgun with some issues. It's a good gun with some issues. Maybe I will make that part of the title of this. A good gun with some issues. One of the guys in our Patreon, one of the men in our Patreon group chat just became of age to be able to legally purchase a handgun. He lives in a very restrictive state, Maryland, which don't really have much love for that state. But he was asking about good first handguns. He mentioned this one. I think that's a good choice, whether in Maryland or not, for a good first handgun, getting into handgunning. You could argue whether it's not as reliable or whatever as the Glock 19 or is proven, but at this point, it's pretty proven. Both the 320 and the M17, it's pretty proven. Somewhere like Maryland, where you have to get I think some kind of permit or something to buy a handgun, and it's really difficult, I think, to get a concealed carry permit, more so than if you're comparing that to a lot of other states or constitutional carry states, certainly, where you can get the one fire control unit and swap out things, especially when you're getting into concealed carry, because I got no problem carrying an M17 or a SIG 226 a lot of the time. A lot of people don't want to carry a gun that big, and with the fire control unit, you can kind of adapt it. That's an advantage, especially in a state where it might be harder. Or like you're a young man working hard to have money and protect yourself. You decide there's something you really don't like about it, instead of going out and buying a whole new gun, taking a Dremel to it like you might do with a Glock and destroying the resale value, you can just buy a new grip module. That's kind of nice. I do like the ability to swap out the grip module. I did take advantage of that. That is nice. I think for a good first handgun, I don't like going, super small. A compact 380 is not my idea of a fighting handgun. I'd say it's better than no handgun. But the 320, you can come in a lot of really good sizes, whether it's like what I would consider a full-size, regular fighting handgun M17, the compact M18, or even smaller configurations of that. It's a good choice for that. So I think it's a good choice for a first handgun. I think it's a good handgun. Anyway, with that, I think that is enough for this episode, at least as far as the topics go. The tactical tip of the day. I'm going to give you two. One is a product, which I don't often like doing as a tactical tip, but this one is really good. This is the holster that I've been carrying this gun in, and you can get it on Amazon. It's the Black Scorpion IDPA holster. Pro IDPA competition holster for the M17. Black Scorpion. This is a great holster, and I have a lot of holsters. I wish I could get this holster for my other carry guns. They only make it for a few models, but they make it for the M17. It is a fantastic holster, and it's not overly expensive for a good holster. It's just a really good holster, right? I've run a lot of holsters. I've had I don't know how many holsters and been carrying I don't know how long. It's a really good holster. So if you're looking for a good holster option, that's it. The other one is I carry it strong side hip, and on my weak side hip I carry a reload. I mentioned that. I carry that in a mag pouch. In that mag pouch I have rolled up a piece of micro cord long enough to go through the barrel if I drop my gun in the dirt and the sand or whatever, or I just want to give it a quick cleaning. I have a piece of micro cord long enough to easily get through the barrel. I have a small patch on there that's 100% polyester, good cleaning patch. It weighs very, very little. I keep it rolled up so it doesn't get caught in the mag any kind of way at the bottom of that magazine pouch. Make sure you roll it up in such a way that it doesn't get caught in the feed lips or anything. I keep that in the bottom of that magazine pouch for just basic maintenance. Consider it like a super minimal bore snake. Super cheap, super easy. Probably 550 cord would work. It'd be a little bit bigger if you don't have micro cord or something like it. But it's just a good tactical tip to have that so you can clean your gun if you need to, especially the barrel. And the ability to clean out your barrel with what's on you, not like going home and going to your range bag or whatever. Anyway, tactical tip of the day. The tactical verse of the day. From the Gospel of John. If you abide in my word, you are my disciples indeed, and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. A lot of freedom is bantered about in the firearms community, and I'm all for freedom. But true freedom, real freedom, is found in Christ. Thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.